and I'd like to welcome you to another special edition of our show as we try to keep you informed during this coronavirus pandemic. Today we'll be talking about the coronavirus, but more importantly, some of its effects on our mental health. This can be from children who are now at home, away from school and hearing things in the background that parents may be talking about, elderly people who might be particularly concerned regarding their high risk should they get sick, and of course everyone in between, including our family members and ourselves. Everyone's being affected by this in some way. What's going to happen with school? Am I going to lose my job? Are there enough tests? How do I know if I'm sick? These are all real questions. We will be answering some of these questions in a follow-up podcast, but right now I think we really are going to be dealing with the real mental health significance and aspects of this unprecedented time. So today we're going to be joined by Dr. Rachel Rohidi, a Baptist health psychiatrist who specializes in the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of mental, addictive, and emotional disorders, and we'd like to welcome you to the podcast, Dr. Rohidi.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, these are very uncharted waters we're navigating, Dr. Rohidi. You have great experience in treating people who have various, we'll say, mental health issues, from depression to anxiety to various other components. But I think it's fair to say that in this hyperacute time, you're probably already seeing a higher acuity or maybe a higher volume. So what are you currently seeing that might be related to this coronavirus pandemic, and what do you expect to see over the next couple of weeks to months?
Oh, that's a really good question. So absolutely seeing a lot more anxiety, stress, exacerbation of depression. We don't really we're inundated right now with so much information. And a lot of things are coming up for patients. New diagnoses and old diagnoses, chronic diagnoses that are now worsening.
I think it's even one thing we say that there's a lot of misinformation out there. People go on the internet or they hear rumors, and that's pretty bad. But lack of information is almost just as powerfully negative, not hearing anything. So I think people should find the proper resources to get their information, whether it's a legitimate news channel or other means, maybe within Baptist Health. We're having a lot of communications as well. But how would you recommend people respond if they hear something that just might be emotionally resonant? I heard of a 5-year-old who wind up having a problem, or let's maybe say a 30-year-old. What should people start thinking about when they start hearing pieces of information to say, wait a minute, let me put this in context. What can I do to not let this piece of information really lead to a full-blown, anxiety or panic reaction?
Panic attack, right? That's the thing. And so we're inundated with so much information, and sometimes we leave the news channels on now that we're, a lot of us have to work from home. We've got our cell phones, we've got tablets and computers, and we're just inundated with information. So I want people to kind of stop, take a breath, and really only say, okay, do I really need 12 hours of information? Do I need this constant stimulation? Say that you're only going to do, 15 minutes of listening to the news. Only get your news from a reputable source, whether it's, one of the news channels or something that like podcasts or information from big medical facilities. I think we need to really calm down the 12-hour marathons of information.
I love that point, and I'd like to elaborate briefly before we move on to some other ones. And this is actually true even before coronavirus, just with our political environment, where there's constant news stream. People will have the news, and whether it's one TV channel with a particular political bent on in the background, but it's actually been shown to have significant mental health effects. And I think,
oh my goodness,
turn that off. It's going to be there for you to find out the information. Don't let those things run. And one important thing I think we could also say is certainly turn it off a good hour or two before you go to bed. You don't want to be watching or exposed to this hyper-stimulatory conversation and then expect to have a good night's sleep. Wouldn't you say there's a component to that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. My biggest thing as a psychiatrist is sleep, and I try to impart sleep hygiene on all my patients. If we don't get a good night's sleep, we're going to have much more stress and anxiety because we're not going to be able to process and heal through our night. And so absolutely, turn the TV off, turn news off, turn the phones off, turn everything off a couple of hours before you go to sleep and wind down. Absolutely.
So let's transition that component into, let's say, 4 topics, and then of course more as we have the conversation. Because I think when people have a situation that's very scary, and we see this when hurricanes are pending, they don't have control, so they look to control things they can't control. So, for example, the run on toilet paper, even though there was no short supply of toilet paper and it has nothing to do with the coronavirus, people just feel they got to control things by protecting themselves. Things people can't control at home. So now people may be working from home. They might be sequestered at home. You don't have situations where they're going to be around their kids all the time. They're going to be around spouses, like we said, family members. Let's take 4 components and let's take them one by one. And I'll put them as sleep, exercise, diet, and then let's use the term mindfulness, which might be a situation where people can take 20, 30 minutes of their day and just kind of relax their mind. So as far as sleep's concerned, you mentioned a great term, sleep hygiene. Can you give some advice and some recommendations towards what that would entail?
Oh, absolutely. So sleep hygiene is really a series of behaviors. And so what we want to do is we want bedtime to be sanctuary. We want our bedroom, our bed to be sanctuary. And so, bed should really only be used for sleep and sex. Those 2 things, that's it. So we have this thing of being on our phones in bed and watching TV in bed